Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today. Very happy to welcome all today with us. My name is Alina. I'm an Education USA advisor, and Education USA Virtual is here with you for another interesting webinar. That's the last one we have scheduled for June, but more of them scheduled for July. You can access now on our website. And as you know, Education USA Virtual is offering you monthly webinars that can help you and guide you through the process of your application. Either that is a undergraduate or a postgraduate degree, we are more than happy to help you with this, with our webinars, with our articles, MOOCs that we have available on our website. Additionally, I can also suggest you guys to check on our website what is the nearest Education USA center in your region. That way you can also get the help of our advisors in the country that you are from. So good luck with your application. Good luck with anything that you are now you are doing. And if you are now in the process of preparing for a standardized test or for an English proficiency test, and if we're talking about IELTS, today we're going to have an interesting session with their representatives. And we have two awesome speakers who have prepared an awesome presentation. We have Gwen and we have Bolu from IELTS. So we're going to put them on the screen, and I will just give them the floor to introduce themselves, and afterwards they can also start with their presentation. I will just also remind you guys that we will try to answer all your questions after we finish with the presentation. You are always welcome to submit your question in the chat, because we are very interested to know if we can help you more, with the guidance of our speakers. So yes, Gwen, maybe it's you that can go first, and then Bolu.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for attending IELTS Essentials, Format Prep and Insights. Today, I am lucky to be here with you. My name is Gwen. I am the Director of Business Development and Outreach for IELTS USA. And my colleague is also here. Bolu, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bolu Oluwadia, and I'm the Business Development and Communications Manager here at IELTS. And I work with undergraduate programs, graduate institutions, all throughout the eastern side of the United States. So all the way as far north as New York and as far south as Florida. And so if there are ever institutions that you are thinking about in those regions, please feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to be a resource and answer any IELTS related questions that you have. It's great to be here with you today.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Okay, then we will leave Gwen to continue with her presentation, and then we'll appear after when we'll start with the Q&A session.
Excellent. So before we go any further, I just want to give a brief overview of the topics that we'll be covering today during this webinar. First, we will go over a few facts about the test itself, and then we will take you through a typical test taker journey. We'll go into the best part, tips and advice for the most success for each of the sections that you will be taking during the IELTS exam. And then we will end this webinar with enough time for you to answer all of your questions you may have about the test itself and how to prepare for the test, and also how to receive the test. So first, IELTS is an English language exam that is owned by 3 different partners: IDP, British Council, and Cambridge. You will notice many of the test centers are run by British Council and IDP within your region. The test itself, the IELTS exam, offers 2 tests, academic and general. We will be focusing on IELTS academic during this webinar because many of you hope and aspire to enroll into a degree program here in the U.S. The test is offered in IELTS exam is offered in 2 formats, mainly paper-based and computer-based tests, and we test on 4 different skills: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Our when you finish your test and you receive a score, you will typically receive a score between a 0 and a 9. And this is important to take note because you will receive a total score of 0 to 9. And typically in the US, universities require a 6.0 or higher. And you will also receive individual scores for each of the skills that you take. And again, this is important to keep in mind because when you are researching for the university that you would like to apply to, be sure to take a look at the levels of English proficiency that they require. Many schools, specifically in the US, require not only a total IELTS score, but they also require specific scores within the different skill sets that you are being tested in. So IELTS, we give you a choice in the format that you can take the IELTS academic exam. We offer it, again, in paper-based, computer-based, and we also offer it IELTS online, in an online format. The main difference between all of these formats is the duration of time it takes for you to receive your test. So if you decide to take the computer-based exam, you will typically receive the results within 1 to 2 days. If you take the paper-based exam, you will typically receive the results within 13 days. And the IELTS online IELTS online test, you will receive the results within 3 to 5 days. After you take the IELTS academic test and you are taking a look at some of your specific skill scores, like let's say you have a 7.0 in reading and writing, but maybe your speaking was 6.5 and your listening was also maybe 7.0. You would like to increase your score, your speaking score a little bit. So you would like to take that portion of the test over with the hope to not only increase that score, but also increase your overall IELTS score. You can do this through the One Skill Retake, IELTS One Skill Retake, which is an opportunity for you to retake one section of the IELTS exam within 60 days of the original test. Now, if you decide to retake that section because you want to improve your score, specifically in the US, you will want to research the university that you're interested in to make sure that they do receive that they accept the One Skill Retake. The IELTS exam is one of the most widely accepted English language exams in the world. 12,000 organizations accept the IELTS exam for their application and admission processes. And we have approximately 4,000 test locations in 140 countries. Millions have taken the test each year. Just last year, we had approximately 4 million test takers with the IELTS exam. And of the 12,000 organizations that accept the IELTS exam, approximately 3,400 institutions, US institutions, accept the IELTS exam, and over 7,000 individual programs. We separate the institutions and the programs because some degree programs accept the IELTS and have degree programs within the United States can be decentralized, specifically in the graduate level. So there may be different scores that will be required for your graduate level programs in comparison to the undergraduate programs. So some of the ROs that have been accept the IELTS exam in the US include Duke, the California State University System, which comprises approximately 21 universities in California, the UC system, specifically UCLA and UC San Diego, Columbia University, Boston University, Purdue, and New York University, to name a few. And then within your own region, we have many test centers and test locations that offer online, computer-based, and paper-based exams. And if you'd like more information about that, again, we have IELTS.org test centers where you can research the location of the different test sites that are within your country, or you may also connect with your Education USA advisors within your country to determine which test center is best for you. So let's get on to the test taker journey. So if you are interested in taking the IELTS exam, the first thing that you need to do is to register for the exam. And as I mentioned before, we do have a page online called IELTS.org Test Centers, where you can enter your country and the city and research different test centers that are located within your home country. Again, we offer 4,000 locations. You will complete the application and submit a payment online. When you submit your application and payment, you need to include a valid passport or your national identity card details. As soon as you submit these items, you will receive an email acknowledgement confirming that you submitted these items. We always recommend that you register for a test 1 to 2 months in advance, especially if you have a disability or a physical challenge that you may need us to accommodate. So if you do have a physical challenge that we need to accommodate, we require 6 weeks in advance notice, so we can make those accommodations. The second step in your test taker journey is preparing for your test, preparing for the IELTS exam. We have many resources for you that are free. There are a few represented on this page right now. You can go to IELTS.org, take a test, and download a PDF version of different details, sample test questions. You can also go to IELTS.org, prepare. And for those of you who are in region where there is British Council available, you can also go to the britishcouncil.org, take a test, and prepare URL located on the right-hand side, and enroll and create an account in IELTS Ready. IELTS Ready is a database, a database where you can create an account and have access to mock tests, videos, and when you are finished or at a certain, feel confident in your studies, it will also help you to register directly to a test center. There is a free version and then there is a paid version. Both are excellent. And then on the test day, step 3, you will need to arrive early to ensure that you have enough time to check in, to also put away your belongings and store them properly. And you must bring the ID that you used when you registered for the exam to the test center. We will, at the time that you take the test, we will do a finger scan and photograph you for security purposes. And then the fourth step in the test taker journey is your results and delivery. If you take the computer-based exam, you will receive your results within 1 to 2 days. If you take the paper-based, you will receive the results within 13 days. You will have an online preview of the results up to 28 days after the initial test date. Institutions will receive the paper test report forms, the TRF forms, or sign up to download the results. So you can send up to 5 results to the different universities that you are interested in. If you take the computer-based, and they can receive them directly through their results service account, or you can send them the paper TRF forms. You can request these results for up to 2 years following the test date. So your results are valid for up to 2 years. Typically, after 2 years, universities will require for you to take another test. And all results, if again, you are dissatisfied with your results, maybe you're dissatisfied with your performance on just one of the skills, again, you can take the one skill retake at a fraction of the price of the original test within 60 days of the original test date, or you can submit it for remarking for a fee, and that will take approximately 6 weeks. So now we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to get into some tips and some advice for being successful on the IELTS exam. So typically, specifically in the US, because this is what myself and Bolu know the best, are the institutions within the US. The IELTS academic exam tests for the listening, reading, writing skills in the context of a university environment. They're testing you in a way that you will be prepared to be sitting in a university environment and being able and also navigate the complexities of a classroom setting. For example, in the listening section, there are components that are going to teach you, assess you for your ability to listen and in an extended listening environment, because if you're in a university setting, you're going to be, just like in your home countries, you're going to have a lot of lectures, and you're going to have to process all of that while you are listening to, sometimes, especially in the US, we have a lot of professors from different parts of the world, and they have different accents, and you will also be listening to students from different parts of the world, and also different parts of the United States. So there are all kinds of accents, all kinds of different word usage that are being used in a university setting, while you are still trying to process the information, write it down so that you can study for your exams and your projects. So in the listening component, we take into consideration all of that. So you'll be listening to conversations and tutorials, videos. For the reading, there are also, in the US, in the university environment, you're going to be doing a lot of reading and assessing, and maybe doing a memo of your assessments, or a report. Writing, there's a lot of extended responses so that it can determine how so that it will prepare you to be ready for a university setting where you will be, as I said, writing a lot of reports, a lot of maybe projects, capstone projects, and lab work, citations. And then speaking, especially in the US, there's a lot of group work. The US tends to do a lot of group activities, even in a graduate environment. You might do a capstone project, so you need to work in a group setting. You need to be able to speak with people from different backgrounds. And also, you're expected to speak in a classroom environment. You're expected to participate. In a US environment, many times, participation in discussion in a classroom setting is part of your grade. So we'll go as quick as we can so we can have some room for questions. The IELTS exam is broken into 4 categories. We have 30 minutes of listening, 60 minutes. You'll have 60 minutes of reading within the test, and you'll do a 60-minute assessment in writing. And then your speaking component will be 11 to 14 minutes face-to-face. The listening for the tips and advice for IELTS listening test. As you can see, the listening is separated into 4 parts. There are 10 questions each. And for us, we recommend for preparing for the listening component to listen to podcasts, TED Talks, Daily BBC 6-Minute English, and Readers with Audios. You can work on vocabulary development by reviewing transcripts of podcasts and studying vocabulary. Then during the test, you want to use the 30 seconds between each section to preview. Don't worry so much about spelling and grammar until you transfer your answers, and listen to and read the instructions carefully. This is extremely important. You want to make sure that you see those phrases, no more than 3 words, or 1 word and or a number for each answer. For the reading component, it's 40 questions. We recommend that you read in English every day, articles, magazines, books, whatever interests you, read that. Practice your skimming and scanning for specific information. That especially is going to come in handy when you're in a university setting and you have to read like 5 books for one classroom. You're going to build vocabulary by creating a personal dictionary. And then during the test, don't spend more than 20 minutes on each section. Survey the text to get to the main idea, analyze questions, and then make sure you have time to check to ensure all your instructions were followed, especially the number of maximum words. And then for the writing portion, there are 2 writing tasks. Task 1 is 150 words, and task 2 is 250 words. Learn what mistakes you make most often and fix those mistakes. For me, I'm a run-on sentence queen, so I always have to break my sentences down into simpler sentences, or properly learn to use punctuation that helps me make sure I don't do a run-on like a semicolon. You want to practice writing in a timed environment, so set that stopwatch and practice your writing. Then read examples of test taker responses at your desired band score, which you can find online. During the test, you want to use the amount of time suggested. So task 1 is 20 minutes, task 2 is 40 minutes. Analyze, brainstorm, select, order, and find examples in 5 minutes for the task 2. Writing essay 30 minutes, and then check your essay for take 5 minutes to check your essay. And the speaking component is broken down into 3 parts. We have the introduction and interview, which is 4 to 5 minutes, individual long turn, 3 to 4 minutes, and a 2-way discussion, 4 to 5 minutes. And the best thing, the advice for the speaking test is record yourself speaking and listen to how you respond. Build up your expressions. Let me think. I'm not sure how to answer that, but and then review your IELTS speaking sample videos. During the test, in the part 2 section, use the 1 minute to write out 2-word notes for each bullet. And part 3, don't stop speaking, just search for a word, paraphrase. If you can't find the word, and I speak another language, sometimes I can't find the word, so I will describe what I'm trying to say in other words. Pay attention to the tense and used in the question. So if it's a past tense, you want to answer in the past tense. You also want to make sure your tenses are aligned. You don't want to go back and forth too much in the past or present tense unless it makes sense. And then show the range of your vocabulary. So there, when you study for your tests, it's all about confidence. And when you get a score that you have worked hard to achieve and you like your score, then you feel confident going into a university setting. You feel like you're ready to ask those questions or to participate and advocate for yourself, not only in the classroom, but also in your student life, living and studying abroad, working on campus, whatever you decide to do. And so for test takers, we have some resources here for you. You can click on that QR code, and these resources are also on that PDF. So we have sample questions, test center search, results preview. And then real quick, we just want to do a shout out for the scholarship, Andrea Scott Scholarship. If you are a graduate student and you have applied to and are accepted into a graduate program within topics like education, women's studies, international relations, and more, then you are eligible and you receive the scholarship, you apply and you receive the scholarship, you can receive up to $5,000 each year for the duration of your graduate scholarship for a graduate program for up to 3 years. So now let's go to questions. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I really like this last slide with the scholarships. I mean, that's a very rare thing when the educators would give this opportunity to students, and especially to graduate students. So we'll definitely share that with our graduate students. So guys, stay tuned. So I guess after that QR code, they would just be able to access what are the eligibility criteria and how they can get the scholarship, right, Gwen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
And we're in the process of selecting our 2025 scholarship awardees. And we typically open up the scholarship in January of each year.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And then award them in July.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you so much for the insight. I mean, we have a bunch of questions that are repeating themselves, asking on tips, on what specifically the students should focus on. So we'll try to kind of, to comprise them somehow. And you guys have a better, I mean, you just understand that those questions are repeated. Some of them are repeating for 5 times. So Olu is going to do her best to just give a very, a wider answer, but, for all of them. Okay, so one of the first question that we had from the students that given the question in advance, that have submitted them in advance, is how can I write essay correctly and fast?
Yeah. Planning. I think that's the big thing. And writing under time pressure. So giving yourself that moment to write your essay within the 45 minutes that's allotted to you. I think that's the strategy for fast is just to practice writing under test conditions. For writing correctly, again, I think that's a bit of practice in knowing what is the examiner looking for when they're evaluating sort of your written test. So you want to make sure that you have a solid topic sentence, like what am I talking about in this sentence, and then have supporting sentences that explain what you mean in your topic sentence. So really the structure of an essay also really matters, right? And what IELTS is in kind of how you're being assessed. So those are 2 key things you'll want to pay attention to. There are a couple of websites that I think would be helpful for people to refer to. And so maybe we'll share them with Alina and the folks here at Education USA, and they can share that out with you guys and kind of in the post-webinar follow-up. But that I take you to the examiner assessment criteria, right? And then that way that allows you to really know kind of how do you focus it and write an appropriate response.
Awesome. Thank you. So from kind of this question would come the next one. You already said that you'll share some links, and also when share that in the presentation, maybe something additional on that, you can recommend free or low cost resources to study for IELTS.
Gwen, do you want to take this one? I'm happy to.
Go for it, Bolu.
I'll
They
do
need
it.
someone new to listen to.
Yeah. So besides what's available on, so if you're looking for free, right, all of the individual partners, British Council, Cambridge, IDP, as well as on IELTS.org, all have tons of free resources. Now, before you even get to locals, just free resources. And we're talking like sample test, PDF examples, like sample, like test prep kind of exercises as well that you can engage in. All of that free at no cost to you. If you're looking for low cost study resources, right, to give you a sense of where do I stand now? How do I really kind of like intensify my study so that I can achieve a particular score? What I'd recommend there is going back to your Cambridge, like actual IELTS prep books. And all of those will be accessible to you via the Cambridge website or the individual IELTS test centers, right? So you can always reach out to the test centers for kind of prep information. Always, right, kind of as a last resort, we're also here, right? If you kind of need additional support, feel free to email us and we can put you in touch, right, with the folks at the test centers.
Great. Thank you so much on this one. A bunch of questions similar to this. When I answered that in the presentation, but just maybe a wrap-up response. The best tips for reading.
Learn how to scan, right? For reading, they're asking you for specific information. So you've got to be able to learn how to scan really quickly, skim for information. So what I would say for reading is read the question first so that you know what's being asked of you, and then go back to the written kind of passage to kind of find the right answer. Gwen talked about in her presentation, they're very specific about what they're looking for, like write a specific amount of words or explain it in a particular way. What IELTS is asking for will be provided to you exactly in that passage. They're not asking you to make things up. They're not asking you to summarize. It's a bit of like a fact-finding mission. So look for the things specifically in the passage and provide that as a response. But learning to skim is a big skill.
Awesome. Okay, the next question, when is it better to start preparing for IELTS if I'm graduating in 2027? That's a good one.
That is. I think a better way to think about it is, when am I planning to enroll at the institution? And so if you're thinking I'm graduating in 2027, am I also enrolling in August of 2027, right? If that's the case, then you'll want to take your IELTS maybe 6 to 9 months before, so that you get it done and out of the way. And you know that you've met the IELTS requirement of all of the different institutions that you want to apply to, right? But I really wouldn't recommend doing it maybe giving yourself 3 months, right, would be like the shortest window that I'd recommend, so that you ensure you're able to get the results to the institution on time. Things actually line up, right? The university receives your result in time to be able to take it off of the application requirements. So if you give yourself about 3 months, you know that you can get that process done stress-free. But really, I'd recommend 6 to 9 months.
And also, you want to keep in mind that the application process of the university that you want to attend in the US, in the undergraduate level, many of the universities start accepting applications in October, and their cutoff date is December. And then the graduate programs, they have a little bit of a different intake. So in addition to what Bolu recommended, you also want to take into consideration when that application is due for the institution or university you want to apply to.
Okay, thank you. And I would like just to clarify on this one, what is the desired level of English the student needs to have? If, Bolu said that the student would have to prepare for 6 or 9 months, right? That means that what needs to be the level of English? Sometimes students cannot rate themselves.
Right. So let me answer my question a little bit differently. I'd say think about like to start that process about 6 to 9 months in advance. Doesn't necessarily mean that like your IELTS test prep starts that day, but at least start collecting your materials and having a sense of here are the deadlines, like Gwen mentioned, so that you know like when do you need to book your test, etc. So I say starting that process kind of about 6 to 9 months earlier. But to your question about like what's the IELTS score that's usually required. So what we see for undergraduate admissions tends to be between a 6.0 to a 6.5 at most institutions. There are your more selective institutions, right? Your top 100 perhaps, right? Schools like an NYU or Columbia, MIT, those will have higher requirements, about a 7.5 and above. And you remember that IELTS scale that Gwen showed earlier goes from 0 to 9. Right. So some schools will have really, really high requirements at the undergraduate level. For graduate programs, what we tend to see is in that 7.0 range and above at a minimum level. Now, there are institutions who will offer like an IEP program, right? Or sort of like an English for academic purposes. So giving yourself maybe a semester or two to get adjusted to learning English, right, within the United States. There are those sorts of programs, and those might require a lower IELTS score, a 5.5 all the way and above. So really there's some choices and options for you as a student.
Great, thank you so much. About time management, how to manage time during the IELTS exam. Students would get very anxious, and even though you would just advise them to not allow more than 1 or 2 minutes to every question, you tend to lose the time and you are not so concentrated. What's the best advice from the start, maybe?
Yeah. Practice under time pressure. I think really for every skill that's being tested on the IELTS, I think practicing under those test conditions is the best way to understand how well do you manage your time. Again, when we go back to reading, understand what's being asked of you, right? You don't have to read the entire passage because they're not testing you on the entire passage, right? So kind of having some like test taking strategies would be helpful. For those of you that are going to be testing through British Council, their IELTS Ready product, right? That might be worth taking advantage of because that will help you practice taking the test under time pressure. So you don't have to like time yourself. That's already sort of built into that system. But yeah, that would be my greatest recommendation is just practice, right? Under those 40 minutes, practice kind of doing that speaking back and forth interview within that 10 to 15 minutes and see how you do.
And Alina, there were some recommendations on how to break down the time management within the different sections in the PowerPoint. I think it would be okay to share some of those, or we can send you some information to share with the attendees of this webinar if you're able to, so that you have that advice of how to manage your time during the test.
We have a lot of blogs that'll be helpful. I'm looking at one right now, actually. They just kind of breaks down for each section. So we'll send some links to that along.
Sure. We can submit them also after the webinar will end. We can submit them in the chat so the students will have access to those.
Okay, awesome.
Great. Another question, a good one. My problem is that I cannot look in other person's eyes while talking. Is it important for speaking part, and how to change that?
I love it, and thank you for sharing that with us. No, that is not one of the components that's assessed. IELTS is a communication test. So really what they're concerned about is your communication skills and how well you can carry on that conversation, how cohesive, right, are your sentences? Does a person on the other side understand, right, the message that you're trying to get across? That's what's being assessed on the speaking component. So if you're not looking them right in the eye, I think that's okay. Try to make it seem as though you're having a conversation with them. But, if you've got to look down or look around here and there, that's perfectly fine, particularly if you're testing in center. When you're testing online, if you're taking IELTS online, right, in your case, I would strongly recommend considering testing in center rather than testing online, right, because not maintaining eye contact could be a security concern when you're taking IELTS online. So you might want to think about doing the test in person versus online.
Awesome. Great. That's a good tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next one, do you have free course for teacher how to teach IELTS?
Yes, yeah, and so that would be one of those things that the individual partner, so British Council has got a program, IDP has a program, Cambridge also has a program. So really depending on kind of where you're geographically located, you'd want to get in touch either with BC IDP as well as kind of on IELTS.org. We have tons of kind of like teacher prep resources, again, blogs, some like, kind of curriculum development materials, right? Note-taking exercises, things you can incorporate into your into your teaching courses. A lot of those, as long as they're on IELTS.org, are all free and at no cost to you. If you're going through British Council, IDP, or Cambridge, there may be a nominal cost associated. Oh, I should also mention British Council regularly does teacher training workshops, and often they'll list those webinar dates readily available on their website. So maybe that's another thing that we can share out post webinar here.
Thank you. The next question, how to prepare for IELTS and SAT in one, and which activities I should do for extracurricular. I'm not sure for extracurricular, I can jump there, but preparing for two tests in the same time, that's a concern that we are always raising with our students. What do you recommend?
Right. That's a tough one. What I'll say is preparing for IELTS will likely help you prepare for the SAT. If you just think about what IELTS is doing, right? IELTS is just measuring English language skills, right? It's all about English language. Whereas with the SAT, there's kind of an academic knowledge component to it as well. And so I'll just kind of say that briefly, but maybe the other thing you want to consider too is like, are both tests required by the universities that you're applying to, right? More and more universities these days have test optional policies, right? So is that something to investigate further and say, do I even need to take both of these tests in the first place? If that's the case, then I think you're the sort of person that would recommend taking their IELTS sooner, right? Again, IELTS is valid for up to 2 years. And if you're preparing to take the SAT anyway, you're continuing to develop your English skills, right? And you're continuing to practice. So what I would do is like do the IELTS and get that out of the way and know that the English component is done, and then continuing to prepare and spend more time getting ready for the SAT than an IELTS. So that'd be how I'd recommend handling that.
Yeah, a lot of the skills that you learn in IELTS, with especially the skimming and reading directions carefully. I don't know about you, Bolu. It's been a long time since I've taken an SAT, but the last time I took an SAT, what got me was not reading directions carefully. So if you practice your IELTS and you pay attention to the directions, I think exactly what Bolu says, the IELTS will help you prepare for the vocabulary and written expressions of the SAT.
Yeah, on the SAT. Yeah.
And just following directions.
I agree. That's the same thing I guess we would also recommend our students in considering and also taking into consideration the extracurricular part. I can jump here as an Education USA advisor. We would always encourage our students to focus not on the quantity, but on the quality. So I would better advise them to focus on one or two extracurricular activities that would not take a lot of their time. Your test during the week, and you can do your extracurricular activities during the weekend or vice versa, depending on the type of activity you're doing. But yes, it's very important. Even if you are an Ivy League university, we're a competitive one, it doesn't mean that you have to do a bunch of extracurriculars. Now they want focus from you, now they want commitment and dedication. They will see the number of hours you are doing. And trust me, if you're going to do a bunch of them in the same time, you're not going to be productive. So stay focused on less activities, but very quality.
Yeah. And when you're in a graduate level environment, the extracurricular activity that you do If it supports what you hope to do in the future within your degree program on a graduate level, that's helpful too. A lot, speaking from experience.
Okay, we will move to the next question. We'll try to speed up a bit because we have still
One.
thank you guys, by the way, for submitting them. Which section of the IELTS, reading, speaking, writing, is best to improve over the summer? Sometimes I find it hard to form my own sentences in English. What can I do to fix that? A short answer, maybe here.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough question to answer. I'll say the choice is yours. When you say you find it hard forming your own sentences in English, I'm going to assume you're referring to speaking there. So hopefully the summer is an opportunity to engage with people, lots of activities, move around, to try to find opportunities to practice speaking your English and be okay with miscommunication happening. And you have a moment where you need to think or find the word. That is perfectly okay. That is part of normal communication, but you need to practice, right? And kind of put yourself in that environment. So yeah, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, that's the best one, I guess. We will move to the next question. What are the key criteria examiners look for in the writing and speaking section? And how can candidates meet them? How to score 6.5 in the writing section?
One of the links that we'll be sharing after the webinar today will be the key assessment criteria for writing and speaking, so that you know exactly what they're looking for in each section, as well as how each score is, like a description of each score. So when they say an IELTS 6, this is the skills that person is able to demonstrate in their writing, right? So it's written cohesively, it's clear, there are few errors that impede understanding. So like that, the amount of errors that you have and how much it is a blocker in the person who's reading that information, how much they can understand the written information, that's like a key component. But yeah, we'll definitely share that examiner criteria out for you. But yeah, out of 6, clarity and thinking about your audience, those would be important components for you to achieve that score.
Thank you. The next one, is it possible to have 7 points overall if I have a lot of spelling mistakes?
No, errors. So out of 7 is where we see, particularly 7 overall, right? Out of 7 overall is where we see people able to communicate complex ideas in the English language. And you can't really communicate complex ideas when there's tons of like spelling errors or communication errors there, right? So again, this is where clarity and correct, right, information really comes in. Yeah, if you're looking for those higher scores, you've got to write clearly and correctly.
And you have the resources already, because these 2 ladies already shared a bunch of them. So I hope those would help. The next question, the first part, I think you already answered that. But the rest of it, what is the successful learning strategy to score to C2 level? How many times does it take to prepare to the exam for the C2 level already having B2+?
Yeah, these are excellent questions. If you're looking to make a big jump, go from a B2 to a C2, depends on how much time you have and how much opportunity you have to practice. If you don't have a lot of time or a lot of opportunity to practice in the English language, you'll really want to consider getting an IELTS teacher, right? Or getting into a really good IELTS prep program, so that gives you the structure and the planned time and space to be able to practice, right, in English. That's really what those prep programs do. But it generally takes about 3 months of intensive study. We're talking about 10,000 hours of intensive study over those 3 months to make a jump of 0.5. So to go from a 6 to a 6.5. So if you're wanting to go from a B2 to a C2, that's about a 1.5 jump score difference. So 30,000 plus hours of study, that's a huge time commitment, right? So what you want to think about is like, is that realistic for the moment where I am right now? Do I really need to achieve a C2, right? There are kind of lots of things to consider, but that's a big jump.
From here comes my question. Might there be a specific part from the test that student maybe that makes the student to have less points? So maybe focus more on that one and taking sample tests each time when he is, performing and he says that he's doing an improvement.
I'll answer that question in two ways. Yes, the answer is yes. There are specific skills where students tend to kind of not perform well. One is reading, simply because they don't give themselves enough time to complete that section. They're reading the whole passage and then answering the questions. So if you can just kind of get that test taker strategy in mind of go to the questions first and then come to the passage, that'll really help you out on the reading section. On the speaking and the writing sections, right? Those two are really about the skills that you're coming to the table with, right? Particularly with writing, right? It's just how well can you write, again, under time pressure? Have you written up to 500 words clearly, cohesively within 40 or 45 minutes? If you haven't done that before, it's going to be really tough to get that C2 score that you're looking for on the IELTS. That's why I mentioned earlier is like, how much time do you have, right, to kind of practice and put yourself in these English medium environments?
Great, thank you so much. So we are done with all the questions that we have got in advance. Now we'll focus to the ones that we've got in the chat. The first one is from Kelly. Hi, everybody. I'm interested to join this. How can I do, please? Thank you. I guess she meant the scholarship. So yeah, I think you can go back to the recording and you can watch in the presentation. You can scan the QR code, and as Gwen said, you can see the eligibility criteria. Okay, the next one. Would you suggest using ChatGPT as a tool for regular practices?
I'm so glad someone brought this up. I do think it is a great idea for regular practice, particularly for speaking, right? If you're using the voice recording function, there was, IELTS also has some like awards for IELTS teachers. So there was a teacher from Southeast Asia who was recently awarded for developing an IELTS prep program that kind of helps students practice their speaking skills by using ChatGPT. And so what they were doing was just kind of practicing that interview sort of format by using the voice recorder. And part of what ChatGPT is looking at is like how well can ChatGPT understand sort of what the person was saying. So it's an excellent tool, particularly for speaking. I would not use it as a way to sort of determine, am I ready for IELTS, or to try to score yourself. It's not there yet.
Yes, I agree. Good. The next one. Are there any trusted websites to find great examples of essays like Test One and that are graded by the right criteria?
Absolutely. All of those are on IELTS.org, and they'll be in the samples that we send in our follow-up later on today with Elena. Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, already graded, and they give you clear instructions of like why this section of the essay doesn't meet this particular criteria, right? They go through all of those explanations for you.
Okay, great. Another question. How long does it take to get a 9.0 band?
It's I think tough. Depends on where you're starting. In the time that I've been here at IELTS, I've seen thousands of IELTS scorers, and still I haven't seen anyone who has an overall 9 just yet. I know they're out there, but I haven't seen one. It's a tough score to get. Even native speakers sometimes don't achieve a 9, so don't take it personally. Yeah.
Okay, good. Then yes, guys, don't be too
hard on yourself.
For native speakers, writing and following directions can be hard because we jump to conclusions, and so writing can be very hard for a lot of native speakers. Grammar, punctuation, as I mentioned, myself included.
Okay, the last one from Margarita. Maybe you can suggest some books to read to practice searching.
Oh, like for skimming and things. Okay. So great answer. The best answer to this question is you can read anything, particularly if it's academic sources. So this can be everything from like textbooks to news articles, research papers, blogs, right? Anything that's sort of written for like an academic audience will be really helpful. And that's really good practice for IELTS because IELTS materials are sourced from academic content, right? So there are things that already exist out there in the world, particularly textbooks. So I think that's one thing that I would refer to.
And by the way, I wanted to ask on this one, should the preparation process for undergraduate be different than for graduate? Should graduate do more academic things or not? In order to excel having the 7.0, because you were saying that mostly for graduates, it's a 7.0 that is.
Right. What I'll say is I think the strategies need to be different, right? Mm-hmm. For graduate, I'd say it's a better test taking strategies to understand like which skills are your weaknesses, right? Because I'm assuming if you're coming in a graduate program, at least at the undergraduate level somewhere, you've been communicating in the English language before. So for you, likely what you need to focus on is like, is it writing? Is it speaking where I really need to improve my particular skills? Versus someone coming from an undergrad perspective who just hasn't had a ton of time practicing in the English language, then you just want to prepare for all skills generally, right? And make sure that you're ready to properly demonstrate your English language skills.
That's a great one. Okay. So I think we are done with mostly all of the questions. I hope that we've covered everything, also from those who have addressed the question in advance. Some of them, as I said, have been repeated several times. So we've tried to compile that and make it in one. I just want to say thank you both, Gwen and Bolu, for this wonderful presentation, for answering to our question. I'm very hopeful that your answers will be useful to our students. I know they are struggling with, with the preparation process, and we have a cohort of graduate students who are now who even created a group for the preparation. So they would just, those are like some like-minded individuals sharing their tips on how to do that most efficiently. So I wish I know it's a struggle, but I think the speaking part, it's very easy to do, especially when you are an extrovert. Sorry. So good luck to extroverts specifically. With the speaking part, I think you will excel there. Exactly. So yeah, they will not be scared to look in the eyes. Great. Thank you once more. We will leave the links, all these useful links that the ladies have mentioned before, in the chat. So if you will have other questions, please let us know. Thank you so much for your feedback. Parvina wrote, thank you for the useful tips and detailed replies. We love to help. Great. Ladies, I wish you a wonderful day. And thank you to everyone that have watched us today. I remind you that we have more webinars coming in July. So please go on our website, check for the events that we are doing and we are planning. There are more coming. By the way, on IELTS, we will have a success story, let's say. We'll have a student from Georgia who will share his path on how he prepared for IELTS and how he excelled to have a score of 7.5. So I think he's a very... Wow. He would be a great example on sharing some tips. So this is gonna be a Zoom session, by the way, guys. You'll get the Zoom when you'll register. So please go on our website. There is a QR code, by the way, also to hear your thoughts. So if you have some feedback to our webinars, that's also going to be helpful. Great. Thank you, Gwen, once again. Thank you, Bolu.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you, everybody. Good luck.
And have a great day. Bye.